Hey, everybody, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the People of Packaging podcast. I feel like I need my air horn back. As you can tell, I'm recording here from the Label Kingdom in lovely Salt Lake City, Utah. I've got my rubber ducks, and it's appropriate that I've got my little rubber duckies here because I'm going to be joined from a special guest from across the pond, I believe is how we say it. You may even hear phrases like aluminium, and the lift, or maybe the tube. I don't know. Those are all the phrases I can think of from the UK. Some delicious fish and chips, perhaps. But I'm going to be joined by Tom Stone. Tom is with Bacavor, like carnivore, but Bacavor. He is the Senior Packaging Development Controller. And I asked Tom to come on to talk about not only his background, but also how is it that they are navigating legislation in the EU and in the UK, and as Bacavor is also in the United States, maybe to give some advice for US-based packaging development people and CPGs on how to navigate the oncoming onslaught that is EPR legislation. So with that in mind, let's get...
So it's how can we bring those new, exciting, aesthetically pleasing, design-hungry formats to market, but not impact recyclability. So we have quite a methodical way of working. Certainly myself and my team do, and I'm sure other suppliers similar to us do, where what we try and do is build a picture, and it's about, what is the challenge we're trying to solve.
Tom Stone, how are you today, sir?
Yeah, I'm very well, Adam. How are you?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. This episode is brought to you by Calendly. Calendly is a website that you can use to schedule meetings, and Tom and I had a bear of a time getting this thing eventually up and scheduled. And so I'm super glad that we were finally able to lock down a time and get this thing knocked out. So Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Adam. Great to be here. And may I sort of commend your pronunciation of aluminium. I thought you did a very good job.
Thank you. I aim to please. Are you hearing me all right? I just want to make sure that the connection is fine. You seem maybe a tiny bit delayed, and I just want to make sure that you're good, because if so, we can power through this bad boy.
Yeah, I can hear you absolutely fine.
Okay, awesome. The videos, your video and audio is a little bit delayed, so we'll see if we can get that fixed in the post production. It's like I always say, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. So Tom, tell us a little bit about how does one go about getting into packaging in the UK? We know in the US you go to a prestigious university like Wisconsin Stout, Michigan State, Florida, Rutgers, Clemson, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, RIT. Probably forgot somebody in there. Purdue. Is there an equivalency in the UK to, like, everybody knows you go to whatever Westchester School of Wizardry and Packaging? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So for years there used to be a few universities that offered packaging degrees, specifically obviously around packaging development and material science. But what's happened sort of over the years, I suppose, as the industry's changed, that sort of died away a little bit. And what we've seen now is a re-emergence of degree courses being offered at one university in the UK. But certainly from my experience has been more around learning on the job. So I started off, ironically, in the glamorous world of self-adhesive labels about 15 years ago, and worked my way up working with different materials and substrates, really, to get to know production facilities, different applications of materials. And so a lot of the industry in the UK is learned on the job, whereas nowadays there are apprenticeship schemes that are supported by UK government that you can do and are financially supported by employers. So you're starting to see younger talent come into the industry, which is what we need over here.
Yeah, 100%. It's needed. It's needed everywhere, honestly. And I love the idea of internships and sort of like trade. Uh, what's apprenticeships? I think is what you said.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So with that being said, who is your favorite Harry Potter character, Tom? That's what everybody wants to know over here in the U. We have the worst stereotypes of British people in the U.S. By the way.
Well, being a redhead, it's got to be Ron, right?
It's got to be, yeah.
Yeah, because I've got to represent and all that. So, and I used to have red hair, but having worked in the industry for 15 years, it's slowly disappeared. So, yeah, it's yeah, exactly. I think it must be part of the policies now for people in this industry to only employ bald people.
It's totally true. Hey Tom, we're gonna try something. I'm going to. Okay, Tom, have the recording issues been fixed? Maybe.
I hope so. I hope so.
Oh, strange.
It feels a bit skitty again.
It went back to being skippy. Let me. All right, Tom. We are crossing our fingers here. That's
okay.
I think we're gonna be good. Okay, so obviously, since you're from the UK, we were talking about Harry Potter and Ron Weasley, but we should probably pivot back to packaging here. So, okay, so you get to go through a bit of an apprenticeship and kind of learn about it. You came up through, you said self-adhesive labels. We both know that labels are packaging. What was it like then to go over to well, first of all, what is Bacavor? What do you guys do? It seems like one of those big companies that I should have heard of that I don't know about, but you're like, actually, we run the planet. And be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So what do you guys do?
So we manufacture fresh prepared foods for brand owners, essentially. And we have probably 17 factories in the UK. So we supply everything or make everything from ready meals through to things like pizzas and garlic breads, desserts, and then there's a lot of salad-based products and pastas in between. So anything that's really chilled and a short shelf life, in a sense. And to support that, we also have operations in the US as well, and that business has been going a while now. And I suppose it's a very different market because of probably the demographics and the culture, but equally the distance is different in the US versus the UK. So what we're trying to do, or what the US team have been trying to do, and it's working really well, is to mirror some of the products and equally some of the packaging we see in the UK and bring it to the US market. And essentially, Bacavor is a global business. And has been operating for a very long time in that market. We're seen as market leaders in that industry. And we work with big retailers, and within that we have our own brands as well that we either own or produce in license for.
Awesome. Okay, so the big thing is, and this is kind of how we connected, was we're starting to see a lot more of legislation come into packaging. And I got to imagine that like ground zero of this is going to be fresh foods, because fresh food is obviously critical to human survival and human flourishing. If you can't eat good food, if you can't eat nutritious food, you can't get access to clean water, and you can't have shelter and clothing problems, right? The big giant problems. So
great,
and so as we start to see the confluence of extended producer responsibility legislation that originated sort of in the EU and in the UK, now start to go state by state here in the US. I would be curious to get your take on what has been the impact on the fresh prepared food industry when it comes to not only costs but also materials. There's certain materials that it's like you just have to use it. the best
Yeah.
available material. What's that been like in your role in the UK, and how are you applying those learnings to your US companies as well?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one because back in 2017, there was a famous documentary that came out, a Blue Planet documentary that came out, and it was all around plastics and the environmental impact on plastics. And what we saw from um, I guess from a consumer angle and from brand owners' angle was this, that everybody assumed that plastics was bad. And so what you saw, Adam, over quite a short period of time was a strategy shift by these brand owners to ultimately have plastic removal as part of their strategies. So in terms of development, there was a hell of a lot of work that went on for a number of years on reducing or removing plastics where possible and introducing new materials. So we continue to see trends on paperization and other things like that. What's happened is we're in the UK, we're partway through this 25-year government environmental plan, which is all around sustaining and maintaining the environment. So in 2022, we saw the UK Plastics Pact, the UK plastic tax come into play. So that was a tax for virgin plastics. And it was to promote recycled content and circularity and incentivize the use of recycled materials. And then that's sort of continued to be there. And then you're quite right, extended producer responsibilities come in, which is focusing on recyclability, and it's run by an organisation called DEFRA, which are effectively the environmental agency in the UK, and it's all around making sure that the materials we use are fit for purpose and are recyclable. And from a food perspective, it's quite challenging because you have the consumer angle on one side saying we don't like plastic, it's bad for the environment, and then we've got the recycling and the infrastructure there to support plastics. And as a responsible packaging person, obviously we want to make the right decisions for the brands, so that may be through tiering and introducing new finishes and new materials, but what we don't want to do is compromise on recyclability and ultimately bring materials to market that are going to increase food waste. Because I think, and my personal perspective is that we're talking about one area of one challenge, if you like, in terms of recyclability. What we're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years here is around food waste, because that's mentioned by the UN quite strongly. And then we're still going to start to see taxes and systems put in place to measure carbon. And that's only going to happen over time. So what we're trying to do is to ensure that we align to what our customers want, to what the legislation says, but equally try to innovate still within that space. And that can be quite challenging because we don't, as I've said, we don't want to reduce recyclability and increase food waste. So what we're trying to do is create formats that do create a point of difference. And I mentioned it to you on another conversation about having formats within food that have that fresh, prepared looking food feel in store. So it's how can we bring those new, exciting, aesthetically pleasing, design hungry formats to market, but not impact recyclability. So we have quite a methodical way of working. Certainly myself and my team do, and I'm sure other suppliers similar to us do, where what we try and do is build a picture, and it's about, what is the challenge we're trying to solve? Is it a new product? Is it an existing product? What's the brief essentially? Go right back to basics. And in some angles, you have to say, if we were to start again, Adam, what would we do differently? And we sort of take that holistic view. And by doing so, you start to get into a position where you future proof yourself, because you may be the same as me. What I don't want to do is develop a solution now that in 2 years' time I'm having to redevelop because we've got it wrong in the first place. So it's about understanding what's coming up, understanding the ask, and trying to be smart in what we do. And because we've got the US side of the business, and the extended producer responsibility scheme is, like you said, state by state. It's a little bit different. The reality is, a lot of the materials are going to be the same. A lot of the products that we're trying to supply are the same. So what we're doing is we're sharing knowledge, because it will then help, I guess, the brand owners in the US with their liabilities, but equally it helps bring a point of difference to the shelves in the US retailers. You know, I've been there several times on holiday. Absolutely, shopping in America is very different to shopping in the UK. I really enjoy it, but it's a very different aesthetic when you walk around, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But it's how can you introduce some of the learnings that you've had here and share them with the market to help elevate and ultimately sell more products, essentially.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. You nailed it when you talk about food waste, and especially in your industry, where that is, I think the UN had identified food waste as like the third largest contributor to carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. And so
Yeah.
it's a point that I bring up not because I work in like I don't have anything to sell anybody from a plastic standpoint. I'm not like, big oil, pro plastic or anything like that. I'm I'm really like pro data. Like I'm like, if we could just stop with all the narratives around things and just focus on like what is objectively true, So,
Mhm.
for example, if you have fresh food, like what you guys are doing at Backavor, and and that fresh food needs to have a shelf life of X, whatever it is, 120 days,
Yeah.
and and then if you go and if the food waste at 120 days is 8% or whatever it is, I don't know what the numbers are.
Mhm.
But you look at that and you say, okay, if we introduce this other material, let's say it is a industrial compostable material, as an example, and that's going to satisfy various legislative bodies, but the consequences are, and I'm not saying this is true, I'm just saying this is an example. The
Yeah.
consequences our shelf life goes from 120 days to 90 days, and it's going to increase the spoilage from whatever I said, 8% to 18%. I think that we can look at those numbers and say, objectively, this is a bad decision
Correct. Yeah.
because
Agree.
of the impact, not just on the bottom line, but also the impact on the planet. That would be a bad decision to make, even though maybe there are a certain subsection of consumers who want you to be an industrially compostable bioplastics, as an example. That's not a knock on bioplastics. I'm just saying that I wish that the conversation could be more driven. I think we're getting there towards being more driven by data and less by dogma.
Mhm.
I guess because there is dogma that does tend to be pervasive in sustainability. It's like let's punt on this stuff and let's just be as focused as we can on data.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
eventually there's going to be opinions because there's going to be brand decisions that have to be made. The data could show that material X is better. For example, you talked about maybe the data shows we should get rid of labels and go to direct print, as an example.
Mhm.
But the subjective reality is that consumers like the look of the label. That was what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So the downside could be reduction in sales by making change A to change B. That's also part of the calculation. Um, has that been part of the ethos of Backavor for a while? Just kind of this like very like methodical, data driven approach to helping kind of, you said, like future proof your brands from a lot of the onslaught of the changes.
Yeah. I think it's about being honest and transparent. And when we work through briefs, whether it's for existing products or for new products we're trying to bring to market, we always try and highlight the positives and the negatives so that everybody has the right information in front of them to make the right decisions. And for me, regardless of my employer, if I didn't do that, I'd feel incredibly guilty, because I'd want people to have all the information and all the data to, like you said, behind it to support that decision. And some of it you may not know, but when we as a team launch new formats, we're always extensively trialing products. Probably in some instances, probably you can't trial too much, but we trial as much as we can to ensure that what we go back to our customers with is a robust piece of work. We can stand behind it and say we've analysed everything from the materials to the production to the transit. That's a bit that other people don't think about, is when you're shipping product A to B, is making sure that it gets there in the best possible state. And there's a huge amount of waste that's lost there that people forget about.
Mm-hmm.
And boxes aren't always the most attractive types of packaging formats to think of, but they serve a purpose. And what you then have, obviously, if it doesn't end up in a store, is waste that has no value behind it, because it can't be discounted in store. It can't be given or sold elsewhere. It's been produced. There's a huge amount of energy that's gone behind it, and there's no value anymore behind it. So we try and think about all the detail behind it, Adam, to make sure that it's robust what we're doing. And a lot of the brands and brand owners in the UK have signed up to schemes that don't necessarily set specific targets around food waste, but they're starting to mention it. So over the next 12 to 18 months, as the world changes, as the weather changes and it affects crops, and costs of energy might change again, things around how can packaging play a part in that. And through shelf life extension and packaging technology, we can support all of that, because if you can extend life on anything, right, you can gain efficiencies through production. You don't have to ship as much product all the time. It has lots of benefits that people forget about, and I think that's also a consequence sometimes of knee-jerk reactions in reducing materials, because actually, yes, we can take a few cents or a few dollars out of your product, but the reality is, and you've sort of highlighted it, you might compromise elsewhere and create other issues, and that value may be greater. So you have to really take that sort of overarching holistic approach, I think.
Totally agree. Well, Tom, we are here sitting at 23 minutes. We have survived the internet demons trying to disrupt us, and we have said to them, "Not today, Satan." It's been awesome. I really hope that people can, especially here in the U.S. in the food industry specifically. I think there's a lot of questions that people have. And it's always helpful to have people, like yourself. I know there's a company called Lorax EFI that's over there that's been very, very useful in taking learnings from the UK and the EU and helping companies over here. So while the U.S. and the U.K. did not have the happiest of histories in the founding of the United States, I think that we have hopefully resolved that through this podcast, and we can say we're friends again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're willing to help out. Tom, how can people reach out and connect with you? Is LinkedIn maybe the best way?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm quite active. So any questions, anytime anyone wants to have an open conversation, I'm on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Not Tom Stone. It's not a Thomas Stone. I only get called Thomas by my parents, but I'm under Thomas Stone on LinkedIn.
Got it. Okay, so your official government name on LinkedIn. I'll make sure there's a link here in the show notes for people to get a hold of you. I'm glad we finally were able to make this happen. I'll leave you with this. Do you have a Premier League team that you are a supporter of?
Yeah, Man United for my sins. Yeah, Man United.
Man United. All right. So go. Do they have a mass? Like they don't have like a. What would you say? Like
We're
just
just called United, really. Yeah.
just go United. That's what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you like Arsenal, don't you?
I don't know. I probably couldn't even tell you a player on the team. That's how devoted I am to it. I will occasionally look at the table and be like, "Oh, Arsenal's good," or like they're not as good. If they're on, I'll watch. But I learned very early on in my Premier League fandom that if you're not all in, you may as well just be somebody like me because you got to be all in. It seems like if you're going to be out of the country. I
Yeah.
would love to go to a game, either at I mean, obviously, Old Trafford would be incredible, but I would love to go see a Premier League game at some point in my life. I think that sounds like a wonderful thing. So,
Well, if when you come over to the UK, let me know and we'll sort something out.
all right, done. I'll be
Yeah.
there tomorrow.
All right.
Um,
Okay, Mel.
Tom, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Everyone go check out, go connect up with Tom on LinkedIn. Thanks so much for being willing to just share about your findings and some of the cool things that you're doing at Backavore. It's really helpful.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Of course.